Good morning. My name is Amanda and I am the registered dietitian here at the Wellness Center. Today I wanted to take a few moments and talk with you a little bit about nutrition and healthy aging. So our bodies change significantly as we age, and this can alter the amount and type of nutrients that our bodies need. And some of the most notable physical changes that older adults experience that can really affect their nutritional needs include a slower metabolism, declining appetite, less lean body mass, shrinking bone density, as well as a decreased absorption of certain nutrients, vitamins, and minerals, which I'm going to be speaking about a little bit more in detail in a few moments, so stick with me. So what do these changes mean for older adults in regards to their nutritional status? And so in a nutshell, older adults tend to require a lesser amount of daily calories, more high quality protein, and the same amount of most nutrients as throughout their entire lifespan, and for some nutrients even a little bit of an increase, which again I'm going to be getting to in a few moments. And so the most important thing that older adults can be doing, really anyone throughout their entire lifespan, but specifically for older adults, in regards to their need for a lower amount of calories and more high quality protein and the same amount of nutrients, is to be focusing on consuming nutrient-dense foods. So nutrient-dense foods are foods that contain a high amount of nutrients, including vitamins and minerals, antioxidants, phytochemicals, fiber, water, and a lower amount of calories. And the most nutrient-dense food groups or categories that we have include fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and lean protein. On the opposite side of nutrient-dense foods, we have energy-dense foods. Energy-dense foods are foods that typically contain a very high amount of energy, meaning they have a lot of calories, and typically have really the goal is to be focusing on our nutrient-dense foods so that we can be getting in the most nutrients as possible for the calories that we are consuming. Examples of energy-dense foods to try to limit as much as possible would be highly processed foods, foods that contain a lot of simple carbohydrates, added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium. So moving on, I wanted to focus a little bit on those specific nutrients that I was talking about earlier that older adults specifically should be focusing on in their diet, and talk a little bit about what they are and what that looks like in our diet. So starting off, I wanted to focus on high quality protein. So as I just spoke about, older adults tend to have less lean body mass. So we have a tendency to lose lean body mass as we age. And so as we get older, it is crucial more than ever to be making sure that we are consuming adequate amounts of high quality protein. So a good tip is to try to focus on including a source of protein with every meal and every snack as well. So pretty much just trying to get in a source of protein every time we are eating to making sure that we are meeting those protein needs. Good sources of high quality dietary protein can include fish, fresh or canned, meat, poultry, eggs, dairy products like Greek yogurt, milk, cheese, cottage cheese, beans and lentils, nuts and seeds, and whole grains like oatmeal or quinoa, which in itself is a plant-based complete protein. Moving on to a few vitamins and minerals I wanted to speak about, specifically focusing on calcium, vitamin D, and vitamin B12. So starting with calcium and vitamin D, older adults actually need more calcium and vitamin D to maintain their bone health. So as I was just talking about, we have a tendency to have shrinking bone density as we age, and so it is so crucial to be consuming adequate amount of vitamin D and calcium so that we can protect and preserve that bone density as we are aging. And so specifically focusing on calcium first, we know that inadequate consumptions of calcium throughout our lifespan has been associated with an increased risk of the development of osteoporosis later in life. So if you're watching this and you are a young adult or even a teenager, now would be a great time to really be making sure that you are consuming adequate amounts of calcium to protect your bone density as you get later into life. So calcium is also needed for our heart and our muscles and our nerves to function properly. We need it for our blood to clot. And so adults over the age of 50 should try aiming for about 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams of calcium per day. great sources of dietary calcium can include dairy products like cheese, milk, yogurt, those dark green leafy vegetables such as kale, spinach, and broccoli. Calcium can also be found in canned fish like sardines and salmon, as well as calcium fortified foods such as soy products, cereals, fruit juices, milk, and milk substitutes. So transitioning into talking about vitamin D is needed for proper absorption of calcium. And so if we have inadequate consumption of vitamin D, we're going to have inadequate absorption of calcium. And so in this situation, our body actually takes calcium from our stores in our skeleton. So this weakens our existing bone and also prevents new, strong, healthy bone from forming. So as you may already know, we can actually synthesize vitamin D from the sun, which is super awesome. Unfortunately, as we age, our skin tends to lose its elasticity and its ability to utilize that vitamin D that we get from the sun, as well as we can when we are younger. So it is more important now than ever to be making sure that we are getting great vitamin D from dietary sources. So food and dietary sources of vitamin D include fatty fish like salmon, tuna, mackerel, beef liver, cheese, egg yolks, as well as vitamin D fortified foods such as fortified milk, yogurt, orange juice, and cereals. Next, I wanted to talk about vitamin B12. So vitamin B12 helps to keep our nerves and our blood cells healthy. It helps us make DNA and also can prevent anemia. And so great sources of vitamin B12 in our food and our diet can come from beef and meat, poultry, fish, eggs, as well as milk and dairy products. So what happens is there are two steps really involved with the absorption and the utilization of vitamin B12 in our body. So when we consume foods that have vitamin B12 in it, we have our hydrochloric acid in our stomach acid that separates our vitamin B12 from the protein that it is bound to in our food. Then our vitamin B12 can combine with intrinsic factor, which is a protein that is made by our stomach, and then it can be absorbed by our body. And what happens is when we age, and adults, over the age of 50 may not have enough B12 absorption and utilization due to a decrease of that gastric acid, that stomach acid, and a decreased rate of absorption of that vitamin B12. So in this case, this is when it might be more beneficial for you to be consuming foods that have vitamin B12 fortified foods, such as vitamin B12 fortified cereals and milk substitutes, plant-based milks, or even B12 supplements, because the vitamin B12 form in these foods is much more easily absorbed and utilized by our body. Lastly, I wanted to speak on fiber. Fiber is important, again, throughout our entire lifespan, but focusing on specifically older adults, fiber is so important as it helps to stimulate our intestinal motility as well as prevent constipation, which is really important. And so dietary fiber can also help lower our risk of the development of heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke, as well as type 2 diabetes. And so women over the age of 50 should really aim for consuming 21 grams of fiber per day, and men over the age of 50 should try aiming for at least 30 grams per day. And so great sources of dietary fiber can include fruits and vegetables, whole grains, including whole grain breads, brown rice, whole wheat pasta, quinoa, oatmeal, barley, buckwheat, things like this, as well as beans and lentils are great sources of fiber as well. And so a great tip to make sure that you are getting in enough fiber every day is to aim for 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. Try aiming for about 1 to 2 servings per meal to help pace yourself throughout the day, and make sure that you're hitting all of those great fruits and vegetable servings per day. as well as aiming to make sure that half of your grain consumption are whole grains. And so whole grains, what I mean when I say whole grains, is when the entire whole grain kernel is intact. And so that is where the fiber and the vitamins and minerals and the nutrients are contained. And so when we process grains, we are actually stripping away those two outer layers of our whole grain kernel. So we're losing the bran, we're losing the endosperm, and so we're losing pretty much all of the fiber and tons of the vitamins and minerals. And so also, when we process grains, those foods are typically associated with an increased content of added sugars, of saturated fat, sodium, all of these things that we want to be restricting as much as possible in our diet. And, you know, all of those aspects that make our foods energy dense, as I was talking about at the beginning of this video. And so trying to focus on consuming at least half of our grains as whole grains is going to make sure that we are getting in so many awesome vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals and things like that, as well as fiber. So lastly, I wanted to end by showing you two meals that I have with my food models here today, a breakfast and a lunch meal that are made of lots of nutrient dense foods and have a lot of nutrients and, you know, bioactive substances in them, going on with them, but specifically focusing on high quality protein, calcium, vitamin D, vitamin B12, and fiber, which is everything that I just spoke about. So kind of to demonstrate how easy and straightforward it can be to get all of these great nutrients in our diet every day. So first I have a breakfast meal in front of me. So it is a serving of oatmeal, raspberries, plain Greek yogurt, and 4 ounces of 100% orange juice. So our oatmeal is a great source of fiber and protein. We have our plain Greek yogurt, which is a great source of protein, calcium, vitamin D, and vitamin B12. We have our 100% orange juice, which is fortified with calcium and vitamin D, and our raspberries, which are a good source of fiber. So I'm just gonna push these out of the way. Bring in my lunch meal that I have here. So here we have a 3-ounce piece of white fish, a serving of beans, a whole grain muffin, and a salad. And so our fish is going to be a great source of vitamin B12 and protein. And if you would substitute this fish out for a different fish such as salmon or any other more fatty fish, that would be a great source of vitamin D. But I only have white fish in my food model, so sorry about that. Our beans are going to be a great source of fiber and protein. Our salad is going to be a great source of our fiber and calcium, specifically if this had more darker leafy vegetables like kale, spinach, broccoli in it, would be a much richer source of our calcium, as well as our whole grain muffin, which is going to be a source of protein and fiber. So that is all I wanted to cover with you today. Again, my name is Amanda and I am the registered dietitian here at the Wellness Center. I hope you learned a lot about nutrition in regards to healthy aging today, and I will talk to you all later. Have a great day. Thank you.